Oh, is that it?
The battle for the universe continues in set 2. This is going to be on New Bloody Ridge. And that first one was pretty wild, I have to say. Fantasy kind of co-opting Flash's Ow My Wrist Hurts build, which is to throw as much Terran crap at the Zerg as possible off of 2 bases, trying to end it early. Even contemplated going for Valkyries at one point in the game, until he realized that Hydra was going to switch into a ground-based build. If he had gone for Valkyries, Fantasy might have had a much tougher time in that game, and Hydra might have been able to claw his way back. But of course, we'll never know now. But now we are moving on to... Whoa! A cameraman hitting the stand. Watch out, guys. It's like monkey cam in here. But we are going to be on New Bloody Ridge now. 2-player map. And maybe I can finally give you my stats in this game. Not stats the player, who is having jaw surgery soon. Actual stats. Except, up at the 2 o'clock position in purple is Fantasy. That means down at the 8 o'clock position in orange is Hydra. Hydra. Now, let's go back to the Captain D's receipt. Back at the Captain D's receipt to give you the stats I wrote down last night. Because both these guys, TVZ and ZVT respectively, for the 2, are their worst matchups. But let's look at Fantasy's TVZ. It is 57%. Being his worst, and that's actually quite good. I consider anything over 50% to be good, anything over 60% to be great. And looking at Flash over 70%, I consider that God level, God mode, which is only appropriate. But this is Fantasy's worst at 57%. Still quite good, and I think that Fantasy is more dangerous than what you read on paper. I don't tend to give a lot of stats these days, just because, yeah, there are a lot more intricacies to a player than their winning percentage, because as Fantasy showed in that first game, he is very unpredictable, a very unpredictable player, and I think that factors in a lot into his games. Helps with the mind games, helps with the wackiness factor, which is always very important. But let's look at Hydra's ZVT. It is at 54%, and that is also his worst. I think his other matchups are 60 or more. So Hydra, another extremely good player, but both these guys are kind of playing their worst matchups right now. The barracks coming up, not the second barracks, the first barracks coming up now for Fantasy. And his natural expansion as the drone tries to go in there and pick off an SCV. Don't think it's going to be entirely successful in that. Fantasy is very, very up on his SCV micro. In fact, in the worker war, Fantasy has taken down one of Jaedong's drones in the finals. That was in Game 5. He ended up losing that game, but that was still an epic achievement, taking down the drone in the mining worker battle. Looks like Hydra is still trying to hang in there long enough to get something done there. But Fantasy is going to be able to wall off. I don't think a complete wall off. I don't think many Terran players do a complete wall off on this map, or if it's even possible. But yeah, it's not going to be a complete wall off, but he is going to have submarines at the front to stop the Zergling run-bys. But okay. And these 2 have faced each other before, looking down on my Captain D's receipt. Head-to-head, they played 3 games, and Fantasy has won 2 of those. Hydra won 1. And their last encounter was in March, so it's actually been quite a long time since these 2 have faced each other. Third hatchery coming up, Fantasy staying in with this SCV. He's going to get the scout on that hatchery. He sees the 3rd hatch coming up. He knows there's no funny business coming his way, no early mutas, like 2-hatch muta or something. But yes, their last encounter was in March, so a lot has changed since then, I'm sure. Hydra has become a much better player. Over the past few months, Fantasy just been getting better and better. Engineering Bay coming up for Fantasy. He's going to work on that +1 upgrade soon, get his turrets up. And here comes Hydra with his Overlord. One can talk, the other cannot. The other just goes, yeah, something like that. Another great Overlord impression from Nuke the Stars. Dear God. Yeah, but it seems that Hydra moved a little bit further out from the safe positioning, just trying to find factory or something unusual that Fantasy might be going for. But it seems that Fantasy is just going to stick to Medic and Marine in this series. Fantasy's come a long way since 2008. I remember everyone making fun of his bio builds around 2008. He just got completely owned by Zerg players. And that's kind of why he went for mech so much, why he became the Vulture Terrorist, just trying to compensate for his weaknesses in this matchup. And that's kind of why this matchup is his worst matchup, just because of the early times. He's kind of building that back up now. Obviously, he's at 57% now. It's a very, very good stat, even though it is his worst. Yeah, he went for mech a lot, went for vultures a lot. He still does these days, but now his bio, I think, is one of the best. I think he definitely worked on his medic and marine play. Some excellent micro these days. Not quite Flash level, but still very, very good. I mean, who is Flash level, really? No one. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you can pretty much name all the great Terran players right now on one hand. Maybe even 3 fingers. Because, yeah, Flash, and then there's everyone else. Flash and Fantasy, and then everyone else, basically. Flash and Fantasy, I think, have mastered the matchup about as much as it can be mastered these days, but the Scout goes down. Hydra kind of sighing there because the Scout got to see the next building which is coming up, which is the Spire. And the Evolution Chamber up for Hydra. Yes, Evolution Chamber going. Oh, this could work out a little bit like the last game. This might actually be what he planned to do in the last game, getting up his Evolution Chamber early, working towards those ground upgrades, possibly for Ultras again. Could be. Because when you go for Ultras, you want to have as many upgrades as possible, and many carapace upgrades as possible, just trying to make them completely unbeatable, even against mines, even against siege tanks. Fully upgraded Ultras with the +5 carapace are almost unstoppable. They're insane. So that's usually why you go for the Evolution Chamber this early, just to start those carapace upgrades for the Ultras later on. It's an investment. But we're going to start it off with some mutas from the 3 hatcheries, already pumping from all 9 of the larvae, and there's some Zerglings just kind of running around. They do have the speed, so I don't think that Fantasy is going to be able to pressure the front anytime soon. Modern Zerg players like to bypass that static defense these days just because, well, the Terran players have been so defensive these days as well. They get their second base, then they just kind of hover there, defend, try to gesture like they might be going out to attack, but they rarely do. There's the third base coming up now from Hydra, and on this map, it's very easy to hold your third base just because it's so close to your natural. And if Hydra gets up some lurkers or something to defend that, he's going to be able to keep those 3 bases pretty easily. But let's see if he can get some SCV kills now. He's kind of hovering around, getting some SCV kills. He's kind of wedged himself between the turret trap. There are quite a few turrets in now. Pretty... Oh, it's going to hurt Hydra a lot if he stays in there too long. But now Fantasy is inside the middle of the map with these Medic and Marines. He's working his way towards Hydra's base. And he's kind of coming in from an unusual, having trouble talking today, an unusual spot, trying to come in from the north to throw Hydra off, but Hydra is prepared for this now. Might be able to go in and get a pincer attack with a bunch of Zerglings. He pumped a lot of Zerglings. If he can move in with all of those, he'll probably be able to clean this up. They're all speed upgraded, and he has the mutas here, but he's got to coordinate this attack. He is coming in with a big pincer surrounding with Zerglings and the mutas at the same time, cleaning this up pretty effortlessly. Oh... So, yeah, Fantasy is in trouble now. He has his reinforcements next to the natural expansion, no medics to help them out at all. So, he's just got to fall back to the turrets and play defensively again, because Fantasy isn't going to be able to move out and attack anytime soon. He's got to play defensive, get his economy cooking, and make sure all of his medic marines don't go down to the mutas. He's got a lot of barracks pumping now. And he doesn't have a turrets to the northern side of this base. Fantasy committed most of his turrets to the natural expansion, thinking the Hydra would stick there first. Hydra taking 2 Mutalisk kills as he tries to harass inside of the main. So Fantasy very confident in his Medic Marine micro to keep the Mutalisk out of his main. I did a pretty good job there, actually. It took down 2 Mutalisks. The Queen's Nest coming up. So let's see if Hydra does go for Ultras, or if he's upgraded his Carapace yet, or his melee attack, or whatever he wants to do. Looks like he's close to taking down this refinery. Doesn't want to take too many shots on those mutants, though. Doesn't want to get his mutants caught between a rock and a hard place. Oh, free medic kill. And kind of bypassed there by Hydra. Could have taken out that medic. One of the most important parts of the Medic and Marine Army, with the Science Facility coming up now for Fantasy. There are Lurkers. They do have the Carapace upgrade, I see, down at the bottom. They do have that +1 Carapace. So they're getting ready to surround and box Fantasy inside of his 2 bases. And I think that it's going to be Hydra's plan in this game to keep Fantasy from taking his 3rd base. Let's see if he will be successful in doing that. He could definitely do a stopped Lurker attack if he gets these Lurkers grouped up with an Overlord soon. And the Zerglings kind of getting over here. Let's see if these are stopped Lurkers. Fantasy is being very, very suspicious. He is not moving out yet. He knows that there's a possibility of stopped Lurkers, so he's just kind of holding his ground for the time being until he can move out a little bit. But oh, Fantasy, I think he scanned. Yeah, Fantasy scanned. Those were going to be stopped Lurkers, but yeah, that was pretty excellent for Fantasy, though. He anticipated the stopped Lurkers, scanned, moved in before they were able to attack, and the Lurkers took a lot of damage in that. So excellently played by Fantasy. Excellent star sense from him to know exactly where those stop Lurkers were going to be. But yeah, a pretty sizable army now from Hydra. You could definitely move in, get another big pincer attack before the Science Vessel and the Irradiate is ready to rip into everything. But the 3rd base is up, very comfortably mining for Hydra. 2 tanks out already for Fantasy, and the Observer's kind of checking out the engineering base, seeing if it was upgrading, but it was not. I'm pretty sure that Fantasy obviously has the +1 upgrade now, +1 Carapace on the other side for Hydra. But his Lurkers are kind of out of position. He has Lurkers up at the north, at the 12 o'clock position, but he's got to bring those in now to protect the rest of his army. Got to bring those Lurkers to the other side, try to get a pincer attack on Fantasy, because Fantasy is working his way to the natural expansion, just inching his way forward with the tanks, which outrange the Lurkers. So, I think that Hydra might be going for a counterattack. He's kind of going over here, cutting off the resupply line. The resupply tank taking down, a few more troops coming in, the reinforcements being shut down as Fantasy works his way forward. This could be a huge pincer. If Hydra coordinates this well enough, he'll be able to destroy this entire army. Unburrowing with all of his Lurkers. He is coming in close with those Lurkers. Defensive Matrix on one, while Fantasy holding his ground pretty well, all things considered. Oh yeah, Fantasy's going to take this, I think. The Lurkers just did not get close enough. Hydra was a little bit too scared with those Lurkers, and yeah, it kind of cut even. Both of them end up losing a lot, and I'm surprised that Fantasy held on as long as he did. I think it's just because the Lurkers were so far away from the rest of the units that Hydra was not able to take that. He just didn't get in there with the splash close enough. But now he has a bunch of Zerglings running around the map. He has 2 evolution chambers going, and he has this Defiler mound. So instead of going for Ultras, it looks like he's just... Yeah, he has a +2 Carapace on his Lurkers now, making them incredibly difficult to defeat. Fantasy thought he'd be able to take that down, but forced to back off as the Lurkers take the high ground area. Yeah, now the Lurkers have the high ground, and Fantasy's going to have a tough time moving out to harass anymore. Oh, he has his Vultures out, the Vulture Terrorist. And he'll probably do some Vulture drops soon, which has been his specialty as of late. Vulture drops inside the main to take out drones. But the mines are being laid, and that's going to spell doom for this ground army. If Hydra can't get this done, Hydra a little bit too far away with the Lurkers again. The D-Matrix Firebat survives. I can't believe that Firebat survived all of that. Still taking hits from the Lurkers, actually. But yeah, Hydra just pushing forward. To the best of his ability, he has some more Zerglings running up, so he does not want to let up on the aggression. Oh man, that Deep Matrix Firebat is a hero. That was a Firebat hero right there. I think it finally died, but he will be buried a hero. That was pretty awesome. And that Science Vessel Operator, he's a hero too. Mine takes out a lurker that was trying to harass the 3 o'clock position. Fantasy is getting that third base going, but if Hydra keeps on the aggression, I think he might be able to deny that. Oh, losing a lot of Zerglings, though, to the mines. That can definitely hamper his plans to take down that 3 o'clock position. Fantasy knows about the 10 o'clock position now. I think he might have scanned that because he is moving towards that position. Another D-Matrix Firebat. Of course, why not? Yeah, Fantasy's been very fond of defensive Matrix, and this series so far has worked out great for him, knowing just what unit the lurkers were going to focus on. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. But even more Zerglings to lurkers moving out now for Hydra. I think he's going to try for another pincer attack. He does have Defilers going, probably researching Consume at this very moment to get the Dark Swarms on Fantasy and protect that 4th base up at the 10 o'clock position. So far, that 10 o'clock base has gone unharassed, which has been very, very good for Hydra. He's got a lot of gas going at the moment. So even more powerful ground upgrades from him. Fantasy has 1 armor, 1 attack, and Hydra, it seems, still has +2 carapace. Very tough little lurkers. Much more difficult to take down than they normally would be. But the Zerglings running in, trying to do some harassment at 3 o'clock, but Fantasy didn't even start that base yet. All the Zerglings take down all the mines. That was awesome. I don't think they're going to survive this one, though. Nope, mine takes down the rest of the Zerglings. Fantasy getting a surround on the lurker. It is at the high ground, though, so it was a bit more difficult to take down. Not completely difficult, because he took it down, obviously. But now Hydra is building his 6 o'clock position, just trying to expand everywhere. As Fantasy finally has his 3rd base cooking, I think. He finally transferred over there with some SCVs. Getting the refinery there, I just saw the refinery coming up. But the Hydra put up a Dark Swarm, but I think he lost everything to mines underneath the Dark Swarm. And just lost his Defiler as well, and the 6 o'clock position. So Fantasy finally getting some damage done in this game. Floating off with his barracks. This means he's going straight for the mech army, which will just be tanks and vultures. He's going to stick to tanks and vultures, which is what he's been doing a lot recently. Trying to protect those science vessels. The science vessels go down. Both of them go down. And more Dark Swarm to surround the rest of the medic and Marines. So Fantasy's got to hightail it out of there again, but he's trapped, it seems. Trapped between a rock and a hard place again. Trying to get the right micro to take down... Oh, but he can't take it down. Oh, poor Fantasy. He has been doing some pretty good micro in this game, but yeah, he's got to retreat. Got to retreat with all of his troops and play defensively. If he doesn't play defensively, I don't think that Fantasy is going to be able to survive Hydra, since Hydra is expanding all over the place now. I have a very heavily macro-focused build going. Plague was done already. I didn't even know Plague was prepared, but the tanks, 4 of them being plagued, that's huge. Because if he runs in now with Zerglings, which I think he's going to do soon, and just runs in there with those Zerglings to be able to take out the tanks in 1 shot each. 1 Valkyrie out now for Fantasy. Wasn't able to get any in the last game, so why not? Let's go for it. Now the tanks exploding. Oh, mind drag. The tanks. All the tanks gone for Fantasy. That's going to be a huge loss for him. Massive loss of troops from Fantasy. I mean, he's focused on his tanks now and vultures. Tanks and vultures. That's what basically his entire army is. He's using Valkyries for the anti-air, but he's been losing Valkyries left and right as well. So yeah, I'd say Fantasy definitely is on the back foot here. Only expanding at the 12 o'clock position. A very risky place to expand for Hydra, but looks like he will be able to defend that. With a lurker on the high ground. Of course, Fantasy got out of lurker range and into siege range, so he should be able to take that down. So Ultras out now. They have the +5 carapace. Oh, Fantasy might be steamrolled now by these Ultras. These are extremely powerful Ultras. They have +1 melee and +5 carapace. This is going to be a nightmare for Fantasy, since all he has are tanks. He's got to find some way to get on the oh man, I was going to say he's had to find some way to get on the high ground with the tanks and siege up, but it might be nearly impossible for him now that there are so many ultras running around the map. Yeah, these are the benefits of investing early. Finally, a little bit of ultra harassment from Fantasy up at the 10 o'clock position. He's taken down a lot of drones up there, but it might be a little bit too late. Drag of the mine into all of those SCVs. The ultras finally go down, but fully upgraded ultras can take so many mines. So many mines. They just eat mines for breakfast. So Fantasy's got to fall back. I don't think he'll be able to get a fourth base anytime, so he can't even protect his third base. Third base in jeopardy now. Fantasy's got to get away from there with his SCVs, otherwise he's just going to lose all of them, I think. Tanks in the back being destroyed by these ultras, even more mine drags, I think, from the ultras. Ultra's one of the best unit for mine dragging, just because they can take so many mine hits. But it seems that Hydra is still pushing here, still being aggressive. He's taking down all the SCVs over at the 3 o'clock position. Fantasy didn't transfer with any of those, so I think he lost pretty much all of them. And Fantasy is still trying to focus down that 12 o'clock, even though he's running very low on troops. The tanks inside the main. Reinforcement circling's on the way for Hydra. Yeah, he's forced the liftoff of the 3 o'clock position, and he's working his way inside the main. And Fantasy, that's the GG. And Hydra making this thing a series. And if ultras don't work once, by God, go a second time and see how it works out. So we have a series now. Let's move on to the third set.